minutes, so about half of the time, we want to get you to, hey, here's what was the baseline, here's what we've done, here's what might have been changed or redirected, and then here's what's left. And then what's the plan, okay? So, and then after that, we'll let Kimberly go through the presentation. This will be able to be posted online. We'll get that out there for you as well to look at. And then you can start filling us with some questions. Solid plan?
Yes.
Okay, all right. We'll turn it over to Kimberly.
All right, so we are currently in year 7 of that 10-year capital renewal. Next year will be year 8. So this review is just, as Jeff mentioned, is to go through where we're at, what the original was based on, why we came to the additional 10-year renewal, and where we're looking going forward. So kind of just an agenda, as I stated. We'll look at that original scope of the annual capital, the original 200 that had been set in place, the 10-year capital, what additional park needs were addressed that contributed to that ballot proposal in passing, an update as of fiscal year 2024 year to date, what projects have been completed thus far, what projects may have been redirected. I know we get this question a lot. There are things that we didn't originally see from the listing of the footprints that have been done and why and what's changed. This presentation today, I'm going to set that out there so you can see what items may have been redirected and then what projects were added. So I also want to highlight the government funded projects. For a topic like this, we cannot ignore that. The wonderful benefits, it's been a huge blessing that the government recognized Sandy Pines and the location we're at, all the way from the federal level to the local township level. So I want to make sure we look at that as well. And then also what our focus is after fiscal year 2027, which we'll be diving into more next year. This is a town hall just to kind of catch you up to date with where we're at. So the original scope of the annual capital, what did it cover? What was the plan for that? Those were regular and recurring capital needs to keep our infrastructure up to date. Items, the largest portion of that is our maintenance, as you can imagine. The multiple facilities that we have here, there's a lot of maintenance to keep them running and operational. The major items in that plan are the replacement of the roof structures, siding, and our interior light structures, mechanical replacements. There are so many different mechanical replacements in this park that we have them on a good rotational basis, and as it's needed, we will replace the HVAC systems, the water heaters, and water softeners. Tile replacement and CC structures. Those are replaced when there's wear and tear on them. I'm just going to bring this up because this was disheartening to me to find out that at a manager's meeting there was damage to one of them that ended up increasing the time, or speeding up the time that we had to replace it. So it should not have happened, but when we have vandalism in the park that's addressing this, this is definitely costing us too. But overall, just regular repair of tile over time. That's another item under maintenance. The replacement of equipment, the maintenance vehicles you see, the bumper trucks and their parts, the tractors, the utility vehicles, the wear and tear they take, those are our member amenities, the court resurfacing and replacement of the tennis courts, pickleball courts, etc., playground equipment, and replacement of our entrance lights. Also the road resurfacing. As we see areas within the park, and this was highlighted a lot when we looked at the original 10-year capital, keeping up with the road resurfacing and making sure that they stay up to date. And then also administratively, our computer and server equipment. There's a server room in the admin building that it's the function of the park that's behind closed doors, and that's why I'm putting a couple of those pictures up there. Members don't see that stuff, but those are the things behind the closed doors that keep this park running and operational. And sometimes it's hard to recognize that those things are there and cost us money. In addition, public safety, our patrol vehicles and equipment replacement, our radar units, first aid devices, their computer and camera updates and replacements, the card system that keeps our park gated and safe and secure. We have continuous updates and replacements on that to keep that secure. Recreation, our recreational equipment replacement is needed. We incur the cost of any damage or any injuries that may be in the park. So if we have damaged equipment that has not been replaced, we can ignore it because we don't have money for it. But then we're going to pay the cost on insurance claims if somebody gets hurt on it. So we don't want that. We don't want to see our members getting hurt because we're not able to keep up with the replacement and repair of our recreational items. Our sales area, we have continuous cabin updates, rotation of our picnic tables as they go through wear and tear. Camping brings in a lot of money to this park outside of the member. It brings in public money, but we need to keep that side of it up so that outside people still want to come in here. And then improvements to the campsites. So the 10-year capital, those were just the original 200 that came across. Those are the items that were covered just originally. So when the 10-year capital came to place, we had to look at what are our additional park needs that we're not able to meet. We had shortfalls in that original $200 capital assessment, and we needed to make sure that we could satisfy that. But then we had additional major structure replacements that needed to take place. We also had projects satisfying emergent and safety requirements. If the state or the county says we need to do something, we need to do it. We need to comply. And we need to make sure that our members are safe. And then also projects that generate future income. There's a typo there, but any projects that we have that could generate future income, we want to make sure that we can do that to help offset other costs in the future. So an update as of fiscal year 2024 year to date. What projects have been completed within that additional $200 plan? The CC 5 and 6 FEMA buildings, the Earth and Dam 2, the retail renovation. We had significant repairs there that needed to be done, and that was specifically for sales efficiency for our employees and members and the appeal of the store. Which we have recognized in the budget. Rebuilding the flea market, the path to phase 3, the phase 3 picnic shelter, shingles replacement and security, additional computer and software updates. We've had some pretty significant ones to bring us up to speed, and our compactor replacement and fences. In addition, we had significant issues with our administrative windows, so those had to be replaced. And before the 10-year capital, there wasn't money to do that. There was a Vermeer 555 jet bath, specific court replacements. Those are additions that were based on member majority requests. So as we've added those, that's come from the additional $200. The phase 2 outdoor pool, the phase 3 pool, and the deck and fence in the phase 3 pool. So that came about when we replaced the FEMA building over there. Additional road replacements that we were maybe pulling back on before because we were limited with the capital available. The mini golf course carpet replacements, before we replaced that was in significant need of repair. And then the fitness equipment replacement, again, that's a safety issue. If we don't have proper working fitness equipment, it will incur other costs and issues to us. So those items are projects that were originally on that additional 10-year capital plan and completed. Projects that were redirected, they were generalized on that 10-year capital project. but as we've gone through the last 7 years, more specifically redirected, we had the water park flooring. That was a safety issue. I actually recall having the board meeting in there the week after we found out about the issue. But there was a literal hole in the water park flooring that needed to be repaired. So we redirected that money to take care of that due to that safety issue. The game room floor, it had been damaged, so we replaced that with wear and tear. The fitness room floor, with the heavy equipment of the fitness equipment coming out in and out of there, we needed to have better flooring to extend the life of that floor. Lake study improvements for protection of the lake. The playground ground resurfacing. Pickleball lights, the memorial landscape. I wanted to highlight these three: the memorial landscape, the RC track, and the train. Costs were redirected for those, but I do have to say some internal talent that we have in this part significantly reduced the cost if we were just to go out to market for that and paying out someone outside of the park to do that. So there is some great talent within the park that allows those features to be available to Sandy Pines as well. The retail parking lot, there were significant issues over by retail in that parking lot, which was replaced shortly after the 10-year capital. And again, that was under road repair, but this was just more specifically redirected. Replacement of the inspector truck, ice rescue suits. That's been an issue just to make sure that our public safety is prepared when an emergency comes. And that was actually redirected to us from the local level. The local firefighters and safety actually encouraged us to have those on hand. Maintenance equipment replacement, I went through the list of what specific things we added there. So we always have maintenance equipment on the list, but the specific things that have been added over this last 7 years: seat planks, Tabco board oven, a gas engine compressor, a robotic pool cleaner. That will help us in saving on labor. A floor cleaner, a CNC machine. I believe that's what's all the signs that we've seen done. We're able to do those internally now. A snow blower. We don't have to rent those. We have one in-house. A Harley rake, a pressure washer, an acid barrel spill container. That's a safety concern all the way around. And a steam and surface cleaner. Some added projects that came up during this time that I just want to kind of highlight. Again, these could be added or redirected, but specifically the North Shore FEMA, this building here. Well, the Golden Onion, if you want to call it the Golden Onion, the adult rescue building, it's had many different names. When that came down, actually it was my first year here. I was only here a few months when that happened. I do recall we were supposed to have the all-nighter, the teen all-nighter in the building. And that morning we received a report from the engineer that the building was failing. I was hearing reports from maintenance that the pool was losing water. And we had them structurally look at it and there were issues. So the building had to come down, and I know there were a lot of different feelings and concerns over that. We wrote the building off for safety of the members, and then at the end of the summer, when they came to take the building down, they had video of it, and the building just crumbled within a second. It was noted that there was no rebar in the building. If that building had not come down and closed off, we probably would have had significant news front coverage that we would have wanted, and safety concerns. So to now know that it's been replaced with a building that can save lives versus a building that was possibly harming lives, I think is pretty significant. But when 2016 and 17, we were looking at the 10-year capital project, was this in the forefront? It wasn't. So as projects came up as a team with the board, the finance committee, administration, and bringing member input in as we can, and working. Rainfield is an issue that came up, something we need to look at. We don't have a choice with. That's a future project, hasn't been going up, but it's on the schedule. Lines of the pavilion, these are smaller costs, the lines of the pavilion, the renovation to the Phase 3 security building. I don't want to say with that one too. Our maintenance has some great talent in there to reduce the cost of redoing, renovating that phase 3 security. So it's more pleasant for the employee that's working there and the guests that visit there. Steel posts for the boat stakes. Those that have been an issue, and that's going to significantly help the issues that we have with boat stakes. The dog park crossing sign, that's a safety issue, and actually that was township led and road commission led. We didn't have a choice with that. We did have a tractor for park and garden maintenance that was purchased, and then renovations to the park and garden. Outside of that original project, there were more shelvings and bins that needed to be added. And then fencing on the north shore of the park. This was along this back area. We had a neighbor that we had members that were running through their property, their farm property, that they, that's their life rate, that's where they live off of. And when it got torn up and they lost crop, they lost money, an issue had to be done. We had to put a fence in. Again, that wasn't on the original 10-year capital, but it was something we needed to do. So to avoid legal issues and just stay kind with our neighbors, we added a fence. The outlet ditch repair at the dam, that was an emergency and safety issue. A fence around maintenance. Mailboxes in the mail room at Carrier. How many people remember when the packages were accumulating in administration? It was out of control. We had to redirect that. So it's easier for members. The GPS locator for boat stakes. The administrative security lockdown system. We looked at different areas. Those are some safety concerns. Security pontoon boat. The Turbo Shack, Happy Shack, and ice machine. Both of those went down. Without those, we'd have to close Happy Shack for a while or have very limited services. Arcade access control. Again, we were having some concerns with people just going into the arcade area, young kids going in there. And so we wanted to make sure we had access control so that people going in there were supervised. A replacement of the sales van, and then cabin mini splits. Those have become more of an issue with the heat. The mini splits have helped to make it more comfortable for our guests. So then the question is, what projects have happened over? But I think that's actually kind of funny because it's the biggest one that comes up when we talk about this. On the original 10-year plan, we did have the kitchen for the pavilion and then also the pavilion roof. The pavilion is in significant repair. If we were to put money into a kitchen there and then also replace the roof, we're not sure how long the building's gonna need major repair. They're gonna be redoing that anyways. So that is on hold currently. With now the kitchen here on the North Shore, we've redirected that plan. It was a need the members needed. We met it in a different way. So it's not at the pavilion, but there's still a kitchen and it's here. A 6-foot chain link fence around the park. That was something because of trying to protect our park and make sure that we stayed safe and had it enclosed for those that were supposed to be here, our gated community. As we talked more about it, we didn't want it to feel a chain link fence around the entire park. We put more into the card access. We put more into the patrols of around the park to make sure we still have the gated community, but not the big 6-foot chain link fence. So we've redirected that focus and vision. A maintenance generator that has not been completed, but it is a significant item that we are still looking at. Replacement of a chipper and specific utility dump truck and trailer, we are still looking at that, and that's still in the plan. A plasma cutter, the water park pool slide, the splash pad, concrete and equipment there. We know that there's some issues there that might need to be addressed, so we're keeping that on the forefront. And the water park new toddler slide. There's been talk about that, and then the dock system, which will generate revenue, and also the rental trailer and cabin replacement. So I know there's a lot of discussion. There's this 10-year plan, and not everything was completed, and there's a lot of things that were ignored. this is the list of things that have it, and I would say the majority is still a major focus for the park. So we have not just skipped over those needs. The governmental funded projects, so I really wanted to highlight this here because I do think it's pretty significant. I put all the agencies, including Sandy Pines, but Sandy Pines, Salem Township, Monterey Township, Allegan Emergency Management, FEMA, the State of Michigan Emergency Management Team in Eagle. All of those partnerships and all of those agencies have worked together to make sure Sandy Pines has what we need to be safe, to be successful, and to keep operating. So we have had significant monetary contributions and support from those agencies. Phase 3, CC5, and CC6, FEMA storm shelters, have brought in $800,000 just from outside local governmental support. $800,000. Phase 4 North Shore building, this one here, was a contribution of $1.962 million from government agencies. The future dam repair and upgrade, that was an emergent need and required. If you haven't been updated, we've been approved for $726,000 from the government. Overall, through the work of a great team here, the board, and these local agencies, Sandy Pines has been able to bring in $3.512 million without touching the member's pocket. And I do think that's pretty phenomenal. And looking at the buildings and what we've gotten from that is pretty significant. So our 10-year capital plan summary today and the projection forward, this will just kind of show you, I've highlighted the specific items. Budget. As you can see, a lot of things were redirected on the maintenance side, so that explains why that's a little bit higher. On the administrative level, it breaks it down on the administrative level, public safety, recreation, park and garden, and sales and camping. So total capital expenditures, the budget for the 10-year estimate was $8.9 million. I have to take off the reimbursement that we have from the general fund, because in addition to $1 million from operations for the phase 3 storm shelters, we pulled in just under $2 million for the North Shore building here, and we pulled over from operations $1.5 million for the pool. So those totals add up to the $3.6 million. So year to date, out of that 10-year capital fund, out of the $8.9 million that we had budgeted in an estimate, we spent $5.1 million. So we've got 3 more years to go. And I did want to note too, in the trend of what that spend is, and you'll see it on the next slide, we've prioritized those expenses to hopefully pull back on needing to pull from the line of credit. So when we first put this 10-year capital project together, there was a potential need for a line of credit. So as we got into a project, we couldn't stop the process because we had to wait for the capital to come in. We cannot borrow from dues and pay back with capital. If we end up pulling money over from operations, number one, we're limited with what the bylaws say. And number two, once it's pulled over, you can't transfer it back, and that's an accounting issue. Operational income is taxed and capital is not, so that's a very fine line that the accountants look at. But we have been able to prioritize so far. I look at it every year and I look at Jeff, this might be the year that we might need to borrow for a little bit because we got to wait for the capital coming again. And it's always worked out with the timing of the projects and the timing of the invoices, and we saved $37,000 on not having to pull on that line of credit. So it is a pretty low interest rate in the timing we would need it, but still $37,000 is a lot that we've been able to save. And then again, this will be posted online, but this is just a trend of the 10-year capital since it started. So in 2018, we had budgeted capital expenditures of $927,000. We spent $1.7 million. I do want to highlight that some of that came over from operations though. As I mentioned, $1.1 million. So that is skewed a little bit. And then 2019, we had budgeted $1.7 million and we brought in 1.1. 2020, 1.3 budgeted, $3 million budgeted, and we spent $352,000. So we had a little bit of pullback on that project, and then we had the larger projects. In 2018 and 19 was when the FEMA storm shelters went in, and we had the start of the North Shore building. Anyone remember what happened in 2020? In 2020? 2020, everything pulled back. Our contractors pulled back. That's why you're seeing that dip there, because when COVID hit, everything kind of came to a halt. 2021 was the finish of the North Shore building, in addition to 2022 with a cart bridge on top of that. And then we pulled back a little bit, and 2024 was the phase 2 flow. And then the cash inflow from the assessments, our annual capital, the regular 200 is on that first line, and then the capital reserve is the second. You'll notice in 2024, we've taken a new vision on that. One of the things that we've looked at is with annual dues. We have the inflation for the CPI, increase the annual dues per the bylaws. And we noticed that inflation more so or the same on our capital needs. So we've divided that out and we apply it to both now. It's the same amount per member coming in. We're just taking a little bit from our operational income and putting it into capital every year when we go through that budget. I then show the transfer from operations and then also the funding from the governmental grants. And then what our ending cash balance. So as of the end of 2024, we still have the rest of the season to continue, but as of right now, we have about $114,000 in that budget. But we'll do another assessment, have expenditures next year, the next 3 years. So we're still on target with where we expected to be in the ending cash balance. And I know there's some questions on the operation dues and assessments too, and the trends from 2016 to 2025 is what I put out there. You can see that it was a slow increase from 2015 to about 2022, 2023. 2022, 2023 was when we had the largest increase in the CPI. Again, per the bylaws, we respond to the March CPI index for the Midwest region. So whatever that marks, that is what the operational dues are going to change by. This blue line here that you see, that was a cable and TV Wi-Fi assessment. That was voted on by membership, and unfortunately the position we were put in, Spectrum and Charter Cable owns all the lines in the infrastructure in this part. We did go out to multiple different utilities or cable companies, AT&T or the local ones out here. I can say there are not a lot available around here because I live close to here and I know the options are very limited. So Spectrum and Charter is kind of the only option we have, and at that time, I know this was discussed at the time, it was our only option. So we were all in or we were all out. They came to the point that we aren't just going to have the cable TV for everybody. We need everybody to jump on board with the Wi-Fi if we're still going to support it. So to say that this increase here with the increase in that internet and increasing the dues and assessments, yes, unfortunately that is an increase, but other members that were using the Wi-Fi, we're spending it on outside of the dues and assessments. It's just, unfortunately, in order to keep that option apart, had to be forced to all. So we have to be careful in including that in our analysis when we're looking at the dues trends. I know it's still money out of the members' pockets, but it is a little different.
Make a comment real quick on the
the cable as well. So if you remember back in the day, there was a $136 cable assessment, right? And then as people started to want to get connected to the park, we had a separate agreement for modems. And if you had a modem, they were charged twice. And it was $96 twice during the season. Correct. So out of that, the membership we have 2,163 members here. There were 1,600 of the members that had modems. So that's 74% of the population here that had cable and the modems. We had 26% that didn't have it. So depending on where you fell in that, yes, it is an increase. And then if you divide that by 12 months, it's less than $10. If you are in the other portion of that population, it was a hit. It was $290 annually, and I think that's where we hear a lot of the, hey, we got really hit with this modem and the Wi-Fi and the cable TV assessment. We did put it out for a vote, and again, looking at the vote, ironically, the votes came in almost identical to the 74-26. So that's probably the largest hit that we've seen over the last years outside of that assessment. So I just want to clarify.
No, that's a good point. And then this orange line is the capital ballot, the 10-year reserve, but the blue line that's kind of overlapping it, you can see that that's increased there in those last years because we're pulling from operations and putting it into capital just to try to spread that increase a little bit more there to help on that. And then again, the CPI index, our 12-month increase, we go by the CPI index for the 12-month increase in March. It's not March 21, but this was a trend of where it was hit. I do want to mark when 2020 hit. We were only at a 1% increase, but we noticed because we are locked in at whatever March is at that time, and everything kind of halted because at that time I remember working remotely because we weren't allowed in the offices and or for only emergent needs. And I remember looking at the CPI and seeing a 1% increase as we saw groceries go up, and we saw our CC supplies just for toilet paper. That was one of our largest increases, and yet we were locked at that 1% when the costs of our expenses kept going up. So we ended up, Sandy Pines ended up absorbing those costs even though we were limited. And then 2022, 2023 is the highest peak we have ever seen. And now you saw it came back down about to where the trend was before, and that was 8.6%. So when you look at the overall increase from 2016 to 2025, it has increased $344, but $124 alone was just that one-time period. So that's just going with the trends of that CPI index, and again, it's for the bylaws of that article. So our focus after fiscal year 2027, where do we go from here? We know in 3 years the 10-year capital is going to expire. We're going to go back down to just $200 assessment per member. For capital, it'll be a little bit more than that since we're now increasing it with the CPI. But we need to still continue to satisfy those original $200 capital assessment needs. We have recurring infrastructure replacements that we need to do. We don't know how long they're going to last with major repairs and updates. I'm just focusing a few of those. Our maintenance building. I don't know how many of you have been there, but the maintenance building. They're doing great in it, but it is aged and needs some major repairs to it. The recreation building where the water park is, as I mentioned, we did the floor, but where it's built, the ground is not holding that water park up, and maybe the way it was built, we just need to make sure that it's gonna last for years to come. And we wanna be prepared for that. The security building, they do a lot of work in there. It's very small for what their needs are, but they're making do. The phase 1 pavilion stays on their radar. And along with that, the dairy deck is our oldest building in this park. And it brings in quite a bit of money. So we need to make sure that we keep satisfying that. And then generator backups. This has been a huge issue this year. We have noticed just last night, power going out. I got a call at 6 o'clock from the golf course, just letting you know, numbers might be a little bit different from tonight. I'm taking sales, keeping track of them on paper because the electric is out. So we had that happen at the dairy deck. On the 4th of July, we sent employees home and we closed it down, and on the 4th of July, had to close it. It was a hot day, but no electric. So we need to look at, in addition to the retail center, those are areas that bring in revenue. We need to make sure we have generator backup. That's expensive. It will pay for itself as we don't lose those sales, but something we need to be prepared for. And again, just replacement of our age convenience centers. We hope to replace them with more storm shelters, and we will continue to reach out to see what grants are available. The competition for those have gotten a little bit harder, where before we were competing at a state level, it is now at a federal level. So the competition is a little bit harder, but we've made our mark, per se. And this building here, I think, could go down in history. It's the first 2-story storm shelter that's ever been built. So to have it here at Sandy Pines, so we're not going to stop looking for those opportunities. So the proposed renewal of that 10-year capital, we don't know where it's going to be yet, I have to say, but we're just kind of mentioning this is where we are. This is what's been completed, and we do have a focus after 2027. We want to make sure we can meet it. So we are in review of that, but just kind of want to brief the membership with that information. So that concludes so now it's open to the membership. Any questions that you may have?
All right. Well, you guys are thinking of your questions because I get to thinking caps coming on. One of the things that we've talked to the board about is partnering with a third-party company to gather the information, our assets. Kimberly has, every financial year, she has to roll out what our assets are, what are their book values, things of that nature, and then you can see those decline, and then it kind of kicks off when do they need to be replaced. So we're trying to partner with a third-party company to help put a plan together for us that we can roll. Needs or future capital needs, and start gathering a list of what do you guys see in the park, what would you like to see in the park? How's it going to look 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road? We want to gather some of that input from you. And how many play pickleball? All right. Wow, I was expecting a lot more hands. We already have more pickleball courts on the list. So
yes.
That was probably one of the first things that has come through our department. But this is your park. This is our park. Number one, it's a 53-year-old park, right? It's got depleting assets and structure. We need to make certain that is continuing to get replenished, so it can last another 50 years, so we can pass it on to the next generation. And then, what are some of the other things that you'd like to see in the park? And then we can start kicking the tires on that. So, yeah, go ahead. What's your name and site, if you want to? We're going to put you right up to the mic. And on camera too.
Gina, I'm at site 438, but I just was wondering, we came in a little bit late, on that list of things to do in the future, was the CC building 2 on there for the handicap showers and bathrooms?
Specific for the handicap shower, so all the CCs are on the list, and then when we start going through the construction, so I'll give you an example, we've been meeting on CC1 that is the latest FEMA project. As we're going through the design on that, if we get federal funds, they will ask for ADA and things of that nature. So as we start replenishing some of these CCs, handicap bathrooms and showers are on the list to get updated in those areas, yes. Good question.
And CC1 was approved. CC1, the FEMA for that was approved, so that construction is going to start. We just approved the timeline for that, not this fall, but the following fall. And that does have 2 handicap showers in there. And then we do have a proposal out there for CC2. Again, that's at a different level, so I'm not sure if CC2 will be approved, but that is our next targeted CC to look at. So.
Where is CC1?
You know, I had to go find CC1 myself. It's hidden by public safety. So if you come in the main gate and then you hang a right, on that first road, you got the stop sign at the gate, you hang a right, and it's down that road. It's hidden in phase 1. And if anybody can help me find CC13, I still think I can find it.
Have you ever thought about renumbering them, like for the phase they're in, like CC4A, it's a common, and nobody knows what numbers are. Yeah.
You know, we can take a look at that. You know, we're always open to recommendations and input. We tried renaming, it was before my time, but we tried renaming the phases, if you remember, and then half of it was a name, the other half was the actual phase number, so whether it catches on or not is a different story. But yeah.
They all had names.
They all had names? Okay. That was before my time. So. What other questions? You guys are just anxious to get out there and run, aren't you? Color run. Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, my name is Steve Wyman. I'm in 6114. Just a couple questions. Me and Jill have been members here for 4 years, and I even voted for the phase 1 multiplex, because I think any improvement's a good improvement, personally. There's some concerns about sinking more money right now. We just got a new park model and stuff like that. But that's not really my question. My question is, do you think that it would be beneficial to just make this a part of our dues? Is the tax benefit of it being an assessment worth going through this? Can you just make it $400 a year, capital assessments? Because capital assessment is just a budget. It's a smart budgeting item, okay? So I think we all know we have to improve our stuff. You have to maintain our stuff. So why don't we just make it part of the budget, or is the tax-free such a benefit?
I'll answer. So great question, Steve. We did exactly that, if you remember, for the golf assessment, right? We threw the golf assessment in the dues. That was a lot of the feedback that we got, as well as just put it in the dues, because then we don't have to worry about it. It's part of our park. It's an amenity. It generates money for us. So just put it in the dues. That's one of the options that I know the board is thinking about as well, as far as the benefits for taxes. I'll defer to Kimberly on that.
Yeah, it's $862,000, so just shy of $1 million. But that tax benefit is huge, and our accountants rely on that to keep the taxes that we have. Again, we're a not-for-profit for purposes of we don't want to pay taxes if possible. So even though we may have revenue coming in, we try to offset that with appropriate expenses, the depreciation of buildings and so forth. But if we were to pay taxes on the $862,000, it would be quite expensive to us.
Could we back out the other 200 and make it a $400 assessment, or even save more on taxes?
Well, and that's what I was gonna say, so in order to do that and save the taxes on it, it has to come in separately as capital and can't just be lump sum in with the dues.
Right.
So, but like you're saying, we have it separated, if you wanted to just have it be 400 and continue, right now it is technically $400. But we are pulling, as I mentioned, a little bit more, so when we had the most recent CPI increase, we've taken it from operation dues and we've put it into capital. And a lot of the reasoning for that is because we've been able to pull money from operations into capital. That money was previously taxed, even though we're using it for capital. So if we're able to increase that capital a little by little with those inflationary increases, then we're not paying capital on it or taxes on it when it comes in because it's coming in as capital.
Well, and the other question I had is, have you guys ever considered doing a one-time capital assessment to new members?
Ironically, that was just brought up to us this morning, so, that's something that I think that's not a bad idea. We can.
It's not gonna fix it, but it definitely is
it'll help.
10%, 15% bump.
Right. The data shows, since we've been able, even the old data that we had to kind of manually pull out of the old systems, the new data that we have out of the new system still shows about a 10% turnover of members selling every year. So
that's 200.
Anywhere from 185 to 205 sales, and that's been going on. I think the last number I saw was like 2016. So.
Well, and I think you guys do an amazing job. Our dues are not, they're crazy cheap, I think.
Thank you.
But a capital assessment for first-time buyers is something normal. People won't think anything about it. But the main thing I want to say is that, we want to improve the park. There's just some concerns right now with all that's going on, put more money into it.
Completely understand. And again, you're right. There's been a lot hitting us this year. Okay, the year's been a little bit of a bumpy one, but we want to get this in front of. Do we have to do something right now? No, but we want to start getting our heads around. We're gonna have to do something in 3 years because in 2027 that capital assessment goes away. Then what? Again, we've been blessed with. The government-funded stuff for a lot, like structures like this, the CCs, the storm shelters. Just having a storm shelter quoted without being a storm shelter is between $600,000 and $700,000. If we maintain our current path now at $865,000 annual, you get your 200 and your 200. We could do one storm shelter. One CC, excuse me, if we needed to.
And I want to add to that though, just our regular capital needs, as I mentioned, the original 200 was 432,000, and then the additional 200 is bringing in another 432,000. So if you look at doing a storm shelter, it's gonna cut into our normal capital if we have to pay it that way. But if we save up and we use 2 years, okay, we go to CC, and then you wait 2 more years, but it's going to be a significant chunk of that additional money.
And go ahead.
To piggyback on that, if we have a turnover of between 150 and 205 people every year, if someone wants to come in, could we charge them a capital assessment right there? To get into it, there's a $500 capital assessment.
Absolutely.
For the new people. I think that's what you were saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Instead of doing it for everybody, and you come in, you
I'm
buy a
sorry.
$500 building.
I must be confusing.
New members coming in.
I'm talking about people that bought.
Well, you're brand new, why don't we get you?
I give it to you. I would have gladly paid $500 capital. I'd have paid $1,000. I mean, because I know the value will be offered, okay? And if you're around a lot, you know, I'm from Florida, so I understand. I mean, we pay HOAs for everything in Florida, so.
HOA buy-in fees, probably.
Oh, that, you know, there's everything. I mean, and the last thing I want to say, and I'll be done. It's great that the government has helped us and stuff, but we also help the government. Okay, it's not just a one-way street with them.
Absolutely.
When they have a storm shelter in an area, it gives them a great check mark. So.
Agreed. No, absolutely. You're right. Excuse me. Good question. Thank you. One of the other things that we need to start thinking about, again, this was great foresight from, you know, the previous leadership and the members of putting this together. One of the things that we do need to think about, though, is our CPI. There's two things with CPI, right? CPI is a basket of goods, not necessarily inflation. And a lot of people get those two mixed up. So inflationary stuff is, you know, also labor rates, it's medical expenses, it hits a lot of the operational stuff that we have to try to offset, where CPI is a basket of goods, and it doesn't hit that. So one thing that we are still talking about moving forward is we have CPI, that index, in our bylaws for operations. Do we need it in our capital when we redo the capital? Because, again, if you take an example of, the best example is the phase 2 pool. Why did we go out for the member vote to say, are you willing to transfer up to $1.5 million for the phase 2 pool? Well, it's already in the budget. Why do I have to transfer? In 2017, 2018, it was on the budget for $500,000. And then when you come to 2023, 2024, it's not $500,000. It's running at about 1.6, 1.7 right now, just for the pool. So that's another thing that we need to start thinking about is, you know, our bylaws do lock us into not the average rate of the CPI. You know, to Kimberly's point, COVID, we were tracking about 3 or 4, and then COVID hit, the world shut down. It went to 0 or 1%, and then it went back up. We were locked into just that 1 month. So we have an ability to capture some of those increased costs, but not all of them, but it's on the operations side. Is there an opportunity to get it in the capital side as well? Do you have a comment?
Yes, I do. I just want to say, capitalism of phase 1. My entire working career has been in accounting, bank management, and real estate, and I think that what Kimberly, Jeff, the staff does is nothing short of amazing, keeping track of all of this and budgeting all of this. Thank you for that, because in my background, I know what's involved with that. Think about what we pay a year, and honestly, I don't know how we have all we have and do all we do here for what we pay. I've been in other parks that pay $2,700 and have absolutely nothing. There's other ones around, so I just on a day-to-day basis don't know how we have what we have for what we pay. I'd like to urge everybody here, I wish this room would have been full because I think this information is phenomenal. I urge everybody here to have anybody you know, watch it if it's on YouTube, look at it on the website, so everyone can see what's actually been done with that $200 or $400 a year, all the things we've accomplished. Because I think people think of an assessment as, what new project are they going to spend that money on? It's not a new project, it's all of the stuff here. So just urge anybody you know to educate on what it really is for.
Thank you. Thanks, Pat. Appreciate it. All right, we had enough fluff in there. Any questions? Trying to pull some questions out of it.
Not a question, but Jim Buchanan, 4008. And Jody and I came back here in 2018 from a place called Brower Park up north that has 1960 bathrooms. Their idea of upgrading a bathroom is putting new plywood and repainting it on the walls for a bathroom. It's just unbelievable the difference when we came here. That part was we would set our trailer up on the 15th of April and have to have it all down by October 15th and leave the park and then come back to the park. I just pulled up this morning the dues there for a basic lot that would be like phase 3 would be over $3,000. For a premium lot is $4,000. I love what Steve said about possibly the new members coming in because those are monies that those people would have to pay right now to go into that park for 1 year. And we look at what we give them with the RC track, with the miniature golf, with the water park, with the pools. You guys are doing an amazing job. The other thing is I was on the campers side of the board meetings up there. They would look at things 2 to 3 months in advance. You guys are looking years in advance. Thank you, thank you, thank you for such an amazing job from the board and the entire staff here. You're doing awesome. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Jim Hawkins, 4031. Just a comment, comment and then a question. The comment is, could we use some of the members to do some work on some of these projects, like the RC track and the Memorial Garden?
Yes.
If we don't know that those projects are available,
right,
we're not going to volunteer to help.
So we have used volunteers down at the golf course. Larry Finkbeiner, if you remember when we brought in that seed container and made it into a bridge. The golf course has done a better job of using members as volunteers. We first go to our internal staff. As you know, Kimberly stated, we have a ton of good talent. We haven't necessarily in the park gone out into the membership to say, hey, would you be willing to help? It's a great idea. Some of the challenges that we run into, OSHA, safety standards, things of that nature, waivers, it's all the legal liability stuff. But that's not a bad idea. We could, yeah.
I mean, if we were to say, like, when we did the Memorial Park, if we were to say, on Saturday the 1st, we're going to work on the park, this is what we're going to be doing, roll it,
yep,
cement, whatever, please show up to help.
Yeah.
My question is,
sure.
On a busy weekend, how many, like the 4th of July or this weekend, how many bodies are in the park, and how many can we accommodate in a shelter?
Great question. So, Paul and I were looking at Paul from Public Safety. Everybody say hi to Paul and back. We were looking at the 4th of July numbers. It was about 38 to 40,000 people in the park, 4th of July weekend. So now, how many will accommodate this shelter? I believe accommodates 1,200 people. I want to say it's 800 up here and 400 downstairs. The CCs that we're looking at will accommodate, depending on the size, I want to say 300 to 400, if I remember correctly. That's really a Steve DeArmond question. He's the expert on that.
It's on the signs outside of the building.
It is on the sign outside of this building. It's on the sign outside of the phase 3 building. So, yeah, if you just take our membership, 2,163, just times it by 2, right? But there's more than 2 people on sites. You're looking at what, 4 to 5, 8,000, maybe less than, just a little bit under 10,000 people in the park without having guests and people coming in. We don't have enough storm shelters to protect our community, and that's why we're trying to have a big focus on, Steve had mentioned the multiplex over there. maybe failure on our part from an administration standpoint to market that when that was voted on, but that purpose of that building was to add another chunk of about 1,200 people. It was a storm shelter first, and everybody looked at it as a multiplex, but we need to do a better job safety-wise to accommodate our membership, and that's what we're trying to do. So, good question. I figured the sugar from the cookies and the coffee would
She did a great job presenting.
poke everybody
I
up.
understand what you're saying.
Roger Corser, 798, and I yield the floor to my wife.
I have a question, but I can't get out of the chair.
No, you're good.
No, I just wondered where the money for the dam, how does that end up coming out and how much we're paying for?
Great question. We're still going through that, so if you've kept up to date with my articles or Steve Yarn's articles on the dam, we selected a contractor. They were selected end of July, mid to end of July. We're reviewing their timeline right now. Quotes, to be honest with you, are coming in between 1.3, 1.4 million for that dam. We have 726,000 from the state, so there's a difference there. The board is still, kicking those options to the membership, discussing those. One of the options are an assessment. Some of the other options are how do we pay for the balance. The challenge that we have with that is the township and the state is telling us your dam is leaking, it has to get done, it has to get fixed immediately. So we're still working through a lot of those details with the contractor on timeline, costs, and things of that nature. Now again, it's a large number, but I'll keep reverting back to the pool. We communicated to the membership, $2 million for the pool. We've done a good job trying to manage that budget. That pool's gonna, that's not wood, but it's gonna come under, it should come under $2 million, all in. So stay tuned, we're still going through that. We're still going through the details and the costs, so. Okay, good question. Any other questions? Well, we can get you, or are you guys just waiting for the color run to start so you don't have to go line up?
You're running, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'm running that way home. All right, well, I mean, if there's anybody else on the board have any comments or questions? Okay. Well, thank you. We appreciate your time. We got another beautiful weekend in the park, so have a blessed day. Thank you.